was a time, not too long ago, when the Earth was a simpler place. 60 years ago, synthetic chemicals were a futuristic novelty. Since that time, the chemical industry has developed more than 90,000 man-made compounds, and the vast majority of them have never been tested for their effects on human beings. These chemicals are found in virtually every consumer product. Chemicals like bisphenol A make plastics hard and unbreakable. Other chemicals called phthalates make plastics soft and pliable. Chemicals make cosmetics smell fresh and fragrant. They make our fabrics stain resistant and our computers flame resistant. But have we unleashed a monster? The chemical industry is only 100 years old, but it has transformed the world. The Second World War accelerated demand for countless new products: prescription drugs, food additives, synthetic rubber, nylon, and pesticides. By the early 1950s, the chemical industry was churning out hundreds and then thousands of new compounds. One product revolutionized the way we live: plastic. Virtually all of these new chemical compounds were derived from one source: petroleum. Synthetic chemicals made modern life possible.
La media mundial de espermatozoides se ha reducido a la mitad en los pasados 50 años. Las anomalías en el esperma y el índice de esterilidad masculina han aumentado drásticamente. La incidencia del cáncer testicular se ha duplicado en los últimos 20 años. ¿Por qué? Actualmente los científicos creen que algunos productos químicos sintéticos son los culpables. Influyen en el sistema hormonal masculino y causan estragos en los elementos básicos del desarrollo sexual. El problema es que esos productos químicos están por todas partes. Algunas sustancias comunes están causando un daño profundo y permanente a los cuerpos en crecimiento. Los varones jóvenes también corren peligro. La media de espermatozoides de los jóvenes universitarios ha descendido drásticamente en décadas recientes. Un hombre joven normal produce menos de la mitad de espermatozoides que su padre, y hasta el 85% de ellos son anormales. Las pruebas contundentes de que los agentes químicos causan defectos sexuales van mucho más allá del estudio de la fauna salvaje.
A mediados de los años 90 me sentía frustrada, porque nadie podía decirme nada sobre lo que estos productos les estaban haciendo a los niños. El estudio sobre la feminización de los caimanes ya se había publicado. Y también otro trabajo sobre la gran influencia de la química en la fauna salvaje. Y los niños, o los hombres, no son distintos a los caimanes en cuanto a configuración general. Por tanto, ¿cómo no iban a afectar a los humanos si estaban afectando a los animales?
Por supuesto que hay diferencias. No es una relación recíproca. Pero creo que nuestro estudio puede alertar sobre la salud humana. Creo que puede alertar sobre la salud de los bebés humanos.
La hormona del sexo, la testosterona, es un mensajero químico que resulta fundamental para el desarrollo sexual masculino. Algunos productos químicos sintéticos pueden alterar o bloquear el funcionamiento de la testosterona en el cuerpo, dañando permanentemente el desarrollo sexual de los niños varones. Esa alteración del funcionamiento del cuerpo puede ser la mayor consecuencia inintencionada de la revolución química del siglo XX. Al principio, pocos sospechaban que la química sintética podía ser tan peligrosa. Los insecticidas, como el DDT, se consideraban inocuos, incluso beneficiosos. Pero en la década de 1960, nuestro hábitat natural contaba una historia diferente, ya que determinados productos como los PCB y las dioxinas destruían el entorno.
A partir de principios de los 40, Las personas que estaban en edad de procrear estuvieron expuestas a esos agentes químicos en cantidad excesiva. Y en 1950 nació la primera generación de niños expuestos a esas sustancias en el vientre materno.
Los más amenazados por esos productos tóxicos no son los adultos, sino los niños y los bebés. Pero los más vulnerables de todos ni siquiera han nacido.
No hay duda de que los más afectados son los niños que aún no han nacido, porque el efecto es permanente y porque el feto tiene muy pocas defensas contra estos agentes químicos.
Es un momento en el que todas las células están empezando a dividirse y a transformarse en órganos. Es algo que puede empezar ya a las 6 semanas de la concepción o incluso antes.
Hasta hace poco los médicos creían que el feto estaba protegido de la contaminación por la barrera placentaria, pero el seno materno no proporciona tal protección.
El feto podría estar expuesto a todo lo que le afecta a la madre. La diferencia es que el feto es muy sensible, muchísimo más sensible que la madre. Por tanto, la exposición es más peligrosa.
Durante varias semanas tras la concepción, el embrión no es masculino ni femenino. Las hormonas sexuales organizan el proceso que determina si el feto será niño o niña. En la 6ª semana de embarazo, empieza a desarrollarse el aparato reproductor masculino. Es probable que la exposición química sea culpable del incremento del 200% de los defectos genitales masculinos.
Ahí es cuando un feto empieza a convertirse en niño. Si no logra pasar de esa etapa, con todos los procesos que deben tener lugar y que ocurren con una concentración muy baja de hormonas, ese niño no logrará una masculinidad completa en cuanto a la configuración esencial de un hombre.
Tras el nacimiento, el bebé sigue expuesto a los agentes químicos de la leche materna.
No hay duda de que cuando demuestras que la leche materna contiene contaminantes y luego examinas a los bebés tomándoles muestras de sangre y de orina y demuestras que esos contaminantes no solo están presentes en esos niños, sino que permanecen en su cuerpo, es algo que causa revuelo.
Pero durante décadas la industria química ha preferido no probar sus productos en cuerpos que aún están creciendo.
Quieren aplicar lo que pasa en un animal adulto para predecir lo que podría pasar durante el desarrollo de una célula, que luego pasa a 2 y acaba transformándose en un bebé. El bebé se construye en el vientre materno, pieza a pieza. Y si algo entra en ese lugar e interfiere en el proceso de construcción, en la fontanería, en el cableado, en el cerebro, etc., ese niño quedará dañado para siempre. Sufrirá un daño irreparable. No se puede volver atrás y reconstruirlo.
La química que amenaza a los niños no solo afecta a su desarrollo normal, también puede amenazar la supervivencia de la especie. Nuevos estudios demuestran que los fetos varones que no llegan a término son cada vez mayores. Hay pruebas contundentes de que la exposición química está matando a los niños en el seno materno.
Cada vez hay más estudios que demuestran que entre la fertilización y el nacimiento, a los niños les está pasando algo. En 2 palabras. Que mueren antes de nacer.
The Aamjiwnaang First Nations Reserve near Sarnia, Ontario, looks like a normal middle-class community. But Aamjiwnaang is different. The reservation is surrounded by one of the world's most extensive petrochemical complexes. In an average year, these plants release over 130,000 tons of toxic chemicals into the air.
I hadn't seen anything quite as dramatic as I saw in Sarnia. Everywhere you went, you could smell this chemical smell. And several times when I was there for a short visit, the sirens went off, indicating that there had been a release of toxic chemicals.
Aamjiwnaang is home to one of the great medical mysteries of our time. In 2006, the reservation became known internationally for having one of the sharpest declines in male births ever recorded.
En vez de la media normal, de mitad y mitad, aquí nacen menos de la mitad de niños que de niñas.
Se revisaron los nacimientos en periodos de 5 años y resultó que la media era relativamente normal hasta principios de los años 90, cuando empezamos a ver un descenso en el número de niños. De 1999 a 2003 descendió mucho el número de varones nacidos.
Creo que en la comunidad todos sabíamos que el lugar donde vivíamos nos traería consecuencias, pero no imaginábamos su gravedad. Era algo asumido como inevitable. Asistí a una conferencia en la Universidad de California, en San Francisco. Era una conferencia sobre salud reproductiva. En la sala estaban los mejores del mundo en la materia. Y dijeron que lo ocurrido en Anjunan era el primer signo de la extinción. Esos productos químicos afectan al feto del varón de forma desproporcionada. Así que el alto nivel de abortos del que informamos en nuestro estudio puede que en realidad indique que los fetos varones no prosperan. Y por eso se da esa tasa de natalidad descompensada.
El descenso del nacimiento de varones es un fenómeno mundial. Actualmente hay más de 20 países industrializados en los que el nacimiento de varones ha disminuido misteriosamente. Desde 1970, el descenso suma ya casi 3 millones menos de nacimientos de varones. Pero el peligro no se da solo en comunidades muy contaminadas, como la de Sarnia, también existe en nuestros hogares, en los productos químicos que nos rodean a diario.
Children live in a state of constant exposure to over 1,000 synthetic chemicals. They are found in computers, clothing, furniture, and bedding. They are in the water they drink and the air they breathe.
It used to be contamination was something that happened to someone else. If you were working in a factory, in a refinery, well, that was your tough luck that you got exposed.
Pollution isn't just something that's coming out of a smokestack. It's in us. It's actually in our bodies. It's in all of us. It's become part of the background chemistry in our bodies. And it's accumulating. And it's accumulating quickly.
This flood of synthetic compounds has made day-to-day life a toxic minefield for male children. Virtually all of the chemicals linked to male reproductive problems are made from petroleum.
In order to make every one of the products that we're dealing with today, you have to start from a fossil fuel. Basically, that's what it boils down to. It's the cracking of it. It's taking that crude oil, that rough natural gas that's coming out of the ground, and cleaning them up and getting those byproducts that are making it possible to make these products.
A common class of petrochemicals called phthalates is used in everything from cosmetics and medical IV tubing to food packaging and children's toys.
Hemos cubierto el hemisferio norte de productos químicos que sabemos que pueden transmitirse de la madre a sus hijos y afectar al desarrollo de esos hijos. Si no frenamos la fabricación y la liberación de esos productos químicos, pronto veremos disfunciones generalizadas entre la población humana.
Pasarán décadas antes de que comprendamos qué hemos hecho, pero ya está claro que estamos alterando permanentemente el desarrollo sexual de los niños varones.
Many soft toys contain phthalates, despite the fact that they can leach out of the plastic and end up in the bodies of infants.
Well, the phthalates make toys cuddly and soft. They basically are the basis of the safe toy industry in our country because the children don't get hurt on nice, cuddly, soft things.
Phthalates are also widely used in personal care products. 3/4 of all name-brand cosmetics, including deodorant, hair gel, shampoo, and body wash, contain them.
They're in the cosmetics because they cling to the skin and they hold perfumes. They're really great for delivery systems to perfume because they penetrate the skin, they'll move in, and they'll take the perfume with them, which then
actually increase the lifetime of the perfume, and it's in hair conditioners. It's that stuff that makes the hair so beautiful and glossy, and you can manage it.
It looks clean, it smells clean, it feels clean. We've been marketed that this product is clean, so it's very difficult to think of it as dirty, as polluted, as toxic. So there's a huge perception barrier to get over.
You know, it's a skin cream, and you put it on your hands. You say, well, I don't eat it. But, you know, you put that skin cream on your hands, and you wait for a few minutes. Is it still there? No, it's gone. Where do you think it went? It didn't go in the air, okay? It went into your body.
One phthalate in particular, used in PVC plastics, is raising enormous concern because of where it is used and who we use it on. Anywhere you look in a neonatal ward, you find one of the most common plastics in the world, PVC vinyl. This flexible material contains a phthalate called DEHP.
DEHP has been classified as a reproductive toxicant by several agencies around the globe. A reproductive toxicant is a compound that has effects through stages of development on the human reproductive systems.
Incredibly, PVC is used to make medical devices such as intravenous tubing, catheters, and blood bags. Many studies have demonstrated how DEHP in medical devices can leach from the vinyl, ending up in the bodies of vulnerable children in staggering amounts. Some hospitals are now replacing their PVC equipment with non-toxic forms of plastic. Of all the chemicals raising concern, none is more notorious than bisphenol A. 7 billion pounds of this chemical are produced yearly. It is the raw material for one of the most widely used plastics in consumer society, polycarbonate. Polycarbonate is a hard, rigid plastic used in a vast array of products, from DVDs to baby bottles. It is also at the center of a public health firestorm. Up until recently, most of us had never even heard of bisphenol A. However, it's been around for a very long time. And we've only recently discovered how dangerous it is.
Bisphenol A was first synthesized in 1891 by a Russian chemist. And it was at a time when there was just a lot of new synthetic chemicals being created. So it didn't have necessarily a commercial purpose at that point. And it really wasn't until the 1930s that commercial use for the compound was investigated.
By the 1940s, bisphenol A was being developed as a possible drug for hormone treatments after it was discovered that it behaved like estrogen in lab animals. The turning point came later when it was also discovered that BPA could be used in plastics as a way of making clear, shatterproof containers and in the epoxy resins which line food cans. Now its history as a synthetic estrogen has come back to haunt us.
Of Canadian citizens who say, what? What did you just tell me? I've been feeding my babies, or I have raised my children using these baby bottles for years. Now you tell me?
When it comes to the safety of phthalates and bisphenol A, Dr. Stephen Henches is the main spokesman for the chemical industry.
In fact, both bisphenol A and phthalates have been subjected to numerous rigorous and comprehensive reviews by government agencies in the U.S. and around the world. After more than 5 decades of use, no reliable evidence has shown bisphenol A or phthalates in consumer products to have caused any harm to any person.
The claim that chemicals like bisphenol A and phthalates have no significant effect on the body is contradicted by hundreds of independent studies. Among the smaller number of studies that found no effects, almost all were commissioned by the chemical industry. This fact has a disturbing similarity to another, earlier controversy.
I want you to focus on another fact that has been published in the peer-reviewed literature. Of the studies of bisphenol A that were funded by government sources, including the National Institute of Health. Over 90% of them find adverse effects on animals. In contrast, none of the studies funded by industry report adverse effects.
The chemical lobby is one of the most powerful in the world.
Senator, as studies become available to us, we at FDA apply
studies from whom become available?
Whoever, if they've been.
No, the only studies you're getting right now. Have you asked for studies from independent sources?
We don't normally ask for independence.
Then you don't protect the American people. If you don't ask for them. If you don't look beyond what's handed to you. Thank you.
In the case of bisphenol A, the issue has taken on a life of its own. Responding to mounting public concern, retailers like Walmart began removing it from their shelves. And then, a surprise announcement.
Safety questions about plastic bottles. Canada's health agency today took the first official step to take some plastic baby bottles off the market. Our chief scientist.
Although our science tells us that exposure levels to newborns and infants are below the levels that cause effects, we believe that the current safety margin needs to be higher.
I think the government understands it has to do something. I think maybe the scientists within Health Canada are telling the government, listen, you really have to move on this.
That's not yet. Who's that?
The powerful symbol of the baby bottle may mean that time is finally running out for bisphenol A.
I'm worried that what will happen is that this will be just limited to, say, baby bottles or infant formula, because this is about so many different things. It's about endocrine disruptors. It's about a regulatory system that's completely broken. It's about the material world that we've decided to build and the chemicals that we've chosen to build that environment.
Canada's stand on bisphenol A is a major victory, and a rare one, because the problem is much bigger than one chemical.